a really warm welcome to our Xero refresher class. My name's Laura Clarkson. I sort of head up our healthcare services in the UK. And if you don't know much about Mazar, we are one of the leading accountancy firms providing services to GP practices. We look after over 300 in the UK. I am very privileged to be joined by Kelsey and Lee this morning. Kelsey is based in our Edinburgh office and Lee is based in Manchester. They are our resident experts in Xero and they're going to run through some tips and demos with Xero. I hope you find it helpful. If you do have any questions, please use the Q&A as they are speaking. We'll try and answer some of them just in the Q&A box. Some will pick up live and there will be time at the end for further questions. Also, as we're going through this, please, if you wouldn't mind sort of doing us a favour, which is if there's something that isn't covered in the webinar and you think it would be helpful to put on a separate webinar on the topic, please do let us know either in the Q&A or in the feedback form at the end of the session. We will be issuing a recording, so don't panic if you miss something. We will be issuing that either towards the end of this week or beginning of next. So enough from me. I am going to pass you over to Kelsey now to give us a sort of demo run through on Xero.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. I'm just going to share my screen with you, so hopefully you can all see that now. So what I'm going to cover with you all today is the bank feeds, bank reconciliations, bank rules, and the chart of accounts. So for me, the bank feeds is one of the key benefits of Xero. So what this means is you can link your bank into Xero, meaning there is no more manual transactions like you have to do with Sage and GP Iris. So to link your bank feeds, all you would do is you would set up your bank within Xero, simply click this Get Bank Feeds button. What this would do is this would then take you to your online banking account. You would log in. It would take you through some simple step-by-step instructions on how to get your transactions linked from your bank and into Xero. So once you've done that, it then means, like I say, that your transactions would just flow from your bank into Xero, then getting rid of all of your manual transactions, making things that little bit easier and quicker for yourselves at the practice. So Xero is compatible with the majority of UK banks, and on their website it does give you a list of all the banks that it does work with, and it does also give you a list of any known issues with banks. So for example, back in November last year, there was an issue with RBS banking in which it was pulling through transactions twice, which I will touch upon a little bit later. But if you are having any issues with your bank, what you can do is you can log on to the Xero website and then they can let you know if this is a known issue and when it's likely to be resolved, anything like that. So it's just keeping you up to date and in the loop of what's going on. So, and then for an extra layer of security, every 90 days you do need to renew your bank feeds. And this is just to make sure that you're happy with your information flowing from one account to the other, basically. And when your banks are about to expire, you'll get a little notification down here saying, your banks are about to expire, would you like to renew? You would just click the renew button and then they would just continue to feed through as normal. Now, if you're on holiday or you just miss that renew period, it's not an issue. You can renew them at any time just by clicking these three little buttons here, and then it would just say renew bank feed. You would click that and then your bank feeds would just renew from when they last stopped. So once you've got everything all up and running and all your transactions are flowing through, you would simply just click this reconcile however many items you've got. And then what would happen is then it then opens up this screen. So down the left-hand side is essentially just your bank statement, and down the right-hand side is how we reconcile the items. So what we'll do is we'll just go through some of the transactions that we've got here. So this first item is a transfer. So it's simply just money being transferred from one account and into the other account. So with Xero, you have different ways of reconciling. So for a transfer, I would just click my transfer tab along here, and then I can then say which bank this was a transfer from. So for this one, it was just from my savings account. I can simply just click this box here, press OK, and then that's that first item reconciled. From then, I would then just go down my bank statement line by line and just reconcile my items as they come. So for this item here, we have a monthly drawings. So this is for potentially several partners, but I'm wanting to then break these down further. So how to do that? You would just go add details. It then opens up a bigger box. The two, so again, you can just say what this is. So in here, I would just say that it's monthly drawings. The date would just be the date that has come through the bank. And then the reference, it's up to yourself if you want to put a reference. So for this, I can say that this was January 23. And then in my description, this is then when I would update based on what this £25,000 was in relation to. So I could say this was for Dr. A drawings. The quantity would be 1. And then my unit price, I would then just change for how much this was in relation to. So I could say this was for £10,000. And then my account is just where I'm wanting this to be coded. So I would just start typing what I was looking for. So here I can see that I've got Dr. A drawings, which is part of the chart of accounts, which I will touch upon a little bit later on. And then again, I can then just split this down a little bit further to say Dr. B drawings, again, keeping this quantity as 1. And I can then change this amount. So I can then put this to Dr. B drawings. And then I can then see that my total amount here matches how much is in the bank. I can then save and then reconcile this amount. So I've then got that. So the next one, I've got NSS. So at the moment, you can see that this has suggested this for me. Now, again, one of the key areas of Xero is at the bottom of the screen. It's got a little box that says suggest previous entries. So I've got this ticked. So then what this means is that Xero has remembered where I've previously posted things. Again, just meaning that it makes your life that little bit easier because it's remembering that you've previously posted this to here, and now it's now just going to ask you, you did this the last time, would you continue to do that this time? Now, 9 times out of 10, it would be doing that. If you change it, it's not a problem. So if I then untick this, I can then see that this gets rid of all my previous suggested items. So like I say, just for ease and to keep things a little bit easier, more time saving, I just keep this clicked, and then it then just suggests my previous entries. So with your health board income, there's a few ways in which you can reconcile this. So you can simply do it by putting it to the one code, which is what I've done in the past. You can break it down like what we did with the drawings. Again, simply just changing the description, keeping your quantity as 1, and then just putting the unit price per your health board statement, and the account would just be based on, again, what you're putting in per your health board statement. The one thing I would want to mention, if you are breaking it down this way, is if there's any deductions or clawbacks on your statement, then just ensuring that these have a negative on front of them because they are a deduction on your health board statement. So again, that's just another way of how you can reconcile your health board statements. The third way is by doing it as an invoice, which Lee will cover with you in a little bit later on. From here, you can then add in the health board statement that has been sent to you. So, and again, a few ways you can do this. You can simply drag and drop it in from an email or your file library. You can click this little bit of paper here, can then upload this from your file document center that you've got on your computer. This would then open. From here, you can then click the statement that was in relation to, or you can add it from the file library within Xero. So what this is it's just a file document center within Xero, which you can just upload your invoices to. You can email them straight into that. And then again, if you've got anything in there, you can then just add that. And then you can then just click the item that you were wanting to attach. And then it just means that you can then have all your statements and invoices within Xero. So again, it just means at the year end, when you're doing your year end accounts and your accountants are asking you for your invoices, you can just say they're all within Xero and we can then just retrieve them that way. And then if you're wanting to delete anything out, you can just click this little cross and then delete, and it's not a problem. So that's how you would reconcile that one. The next one we've got here is I have already created a bank rule for. So I'll show you how to actually create them, but I'm just wanting to show you that once you've created bank rules, this is what it looks like on your system. So the bank rule has been created and now just says you're going to apply the MDDS rule, and then I would simply press OK, and then that's that one reconciled. So to actually create a rule, you would just go Options, Create Bank Rule. And then from here, it then opens up this box. So it's then saying I'm wanting to match any of the following conditions. So I've got my description equals HMRC PAYE. Now what I would want to do is where it says equals, I'd want to change this to contains. Now the reason I'm doing that is often on bank statements, there'll be random numbers at the end of the transaction. Now these numbers often change. So if you've got this as equals and these numbers do change ever so slightly, your bank rule won't pick up. So if we change this to contains, and then if we then just delete these little numbers out, it then means that your Xero will automatically always pick up your bank rule. Step 2, we're going to create a contact. So for this, I would just call HMRC PAYE. And then within the description, I would then just basically say what this is. So again, just HMRC PAYE/NI. My account, I would always just code this within my staff salaries. So within my chart of account, I can then just type what I'm looking for, which was staff salaries. No VAT if you're non-VAT registered practice. And then I would then just want to save my rule. So then once my rule is saved, like I say, this will then just pick up my rule and then it will then just apply it. The next one, so this HMRC PAYE one, it actually attached an invoice. So again, Lee will show you the bills to pay section. So if you've got an invoice sat within your bills to pay, then it will automatically try and match off as long as your amount per your bank matches your invoice that you've got in your bills to pay section. If it does, that's fine. You can then just reconcile it. And then you can also do the same with money you've received in as well. So with this income here, again, Lee will show you how to create the invoices, but if you are using Xero to create your invoices, once the income is then come into the bank, you can then match these invoices off, meaning you can then allocate a payment to the invoice. To do this, you would simply just click match, and then this would then open up all the list of invoices that you've currently got sat as a waiting payment on your Xero. So for this one, I can see I've got quite a few as outstanding. And then what I'm wanting to do is I'm just wanting to allocate the items that are in relation to this £85. So I know that's these two here. This then goes green because it matches this £85. So once I've done that, again, I can then just press reconcile, and then that's that transaction dealt with. So if you've got items that if there's maybe just one invoice, so like this DWP one, this automatically goes green because there's only one invoice for DWP for this £33.50. So that's automatically tried to match each other off. And now this is Xero just saying to me, you have this in your Xero, we can see this amount coming through. Are you happy for these to be matched off? In this case, I am. So I would simply just press OK, and then that's that item reconciled. So you would simply just go through your bank statement, just matching them off line by line, reconciling them, adding invoices as you go, creating bank rules if you'd like. Now, once you've got everything reconciled, your statement balance and your balance in Xero would be just the one figure. And then what's really important to do is just always check that your statement balance in Xero matches your statement balance on your actual physical bank statement. Now, like I say, this is because back in November, there was an issue with the RBS where it was pulling through the transactions twice. Now, it didn't mean that the transactions had been paid twice. There was just a slight technical glitch and the transactions had pulled through twice. So if you then go to your bank statements tab, you can then check your bank statement balance. So if I then just check my balance right here to my bank statement, and if they're out, I can then have a look through my bank statement and just see when the issue occurred. So if I was to go through my statement, I can now see here that I've got 2 transactions for Asda's, Medisave, and my credit card. So what I can do is I can then just pick the items which are duplicates, click these little buttons here, and then just delete them out. Now, it's not an issue if you delete them and then you think, oh, actually that wasn't a duplicate. I did pay that twice. So you can then just click this button again and then simply just restore it. So anything that has been deleted can be restored. It's not an issue. So that's the main gist of the reconciliations, the bank feeds, and the bank rules. So I will just quickly show you the file library that I was talking about. So to access this, you would click here where it would have your practice name. It would then give you this drop-down menu. If you then click into where it says files, and then this is your file library. So from here, again, you can upload files from your own system. You can email in using the email address that you can find on the right-hand side, which, to be honest, I would just add to your favourites because it is a bit ridiculous. And each Xero does have its own individual email address for sending things into. You can then create little folders based on the invoices and things that you're sending in. And then means you can upload, profit shares, etc., into your Xero as well. So it means at the year end, all your information can be within Xero. The only thing with the file document center is it doesn't archive the information. Meaning, if you are not using the folders, you could just end up with 50, 60, 100 invoices just sat here, all just within the one place. So that is something just to be aware of. The next thing I'm just wanting to show you is the chart of accounts. So to access this, you just go accounting and then chart of accounts. And then this will then just open up all the accounts and the chart of account, basically just your codes that you've got within Xero. So your chart of accounts is really important to get right. And Xero doesn't provide you with the list that is for medical practices. So it's more for limited companies. So it'd be sales, revenue, cost of sales, all that kind of stuff. So you're wanting to make sure that you're getting things like your global sum, superannuation, etc., all within these codes, just to make sure that you're coding things how you're used to and that you've got the codes correct going forward, just so it makes your life easier more than anything, to be honest. So, and you can upload these in a bulk batch, which if you speak to your accountant, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to help with this. We do have a standardised set that we upload to our practices to make sure that they have the best codes possible for their practice. Now, if there is a code that you've got set up that you maybe want to change, you can do that, not a problem. You can simply just click into it. So for instance, you would scroll down if there was maybe one of the partners that had changed their names. So Dr. B, you could just click into her and you can then just change this to Dr. New name and then save it. So any of the chart of accounts you've got can be edited, deleted at any time. You can also add new codes at any time as well. Just by scrolling to the top, you would click add account. From here, so if you've got an income code, it would be revenue. And if you had an expenditure code, it would just be an overhead. You would then just pop in the code number, so say 13. If it goes green, the code's available. However, if you put in a code that has already been used, it will tell you the code is not available. So if you're just using a code, if you just want to put in a code, you can then just pop in what you're wanting it to be. So you could say this was for payroll expenses, and you can then just save that there. So it then just means you've then got this this code to be used when you're then reconciling your items. And then if you're wanting to search for anything in particular, you can then search for the codes that you've got up here. And then this will then show you all the codes that are under drawings. And then, like I say, you can then go in and edit them at any time. So I think that's me for just now. So I'll hand over to Lee and hopefully that will be okay.
Thanks, Kelsey. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for, we've had some questions in already, which is really good, and some ideas for potential what we can cover in future webinars too. So that's excellent. Thanks for your getting involved there. So I will share my screen, and as Kelsey says, I will touch on Xero invoices and raising invoices and things like that, for repeated invoices for things like PCSE statements and health board statements and things like that, and also just for ease, really, to try and give you some time back. I will also touch very briefly on tracking as well towards the end of the session. So if you bear with me, there we go. Hopefully you can all see my screen. I do apologise, I'm looking the other way because I'm on a bigger screen rather than a small laptop. But essentially, as Kelsey's covered, in terms of your bank accounts that are on your dashboard, you have them sat there, and she's made the point of the statement balance and your bank balance matching. That is really key. And also covering the basics in terms of reconcile. And that may well be, you know, exactly what most of you need. You might not need to kind of use Xero in any more capacity other than that, but those that do want to get involved a little bit more in that kind of capacity, then we can look at raising invoices, we can look at raising repeat invoices, we can look at raising your bills, so your expenditure and repeating bills for things like direct debits and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to run through that with you this morning, and then also show you how you then reconcile them within your reconcile page. Okay, so we will start with just a basic one-off invoice that you just want to raise. Okay, and that is really simple. From your dashboard, you will see here you have invoices owed to you and bills you need to pay, which is essentially, in theory, the money that you're owed in still, that you've raised invoices for, and then the money that you still need to pay in terms of the bills that you've had in that you've got to pay your suppliers. To raise a new sales invoice, very simple. Click on your sales invoice tab, and it will bring you up a standard template invoice. In here, who you would be invoicing to, so NHS, or if it was private work or whoever it was, you can just type in the name of whoever it needs to be in there, which is absolutely fine. NHS England. The issue date of the invoice would be the date that you've raised that invoice, and then the due date is up to you. You can change that to 30 days. And you can set up all these settings if you are going to use Xero to actually email invoices out to maybe for private work or for other things other than NHS work, because you can't use the Xero invoice to invoice the NHS, as we know. But you can use it for those kind of purposes. So you will be able to kind of set up an invoice template with your logo, that kind of thing, with your terms and conditions. And if I have chance and have time, I will just touch on that as well this morning for you. But the invoice would be set up here, the issue date, the due date. The invoice number is automated by Xero. And again, a reference is up to you if you want to put that in there. And then in here, you would simply put the description of what that invoice is, the quantity of what it is, the price, and then the account is basically where you would be posting that within your chart of accounts. So if we said in here, we put test, the quantity would be 1, the price would be £400. And then in here, you would choose from your chart of accounts what you wanted to do. So you could put in there, for example, private report fees, should you wish. And that will sit in there. And then at that point, these are the two options you've got. If you are wanting to email that out to a client, you would simply click approve an email. That would bring up a standard email, which then would go to the person that you are sending this invoice to. And also it will send you a copy also, which then enables them to pay that. However, if you're just using this to track and you have your own invoice systems, you simply click into the approve button here. Just click on your drop down, click on approve. Okay. At this point as well, you've got the attached file. So if you do have some paperwork, you can upload, as Kelsey's shown you, from either the file library, or if you've got 2 screens and you've got the invoice in an email or something, you can just simply drag and drop it into this area and it will populate, which is really easy, really simple to do. And then at that point, if you approve that, what will happen with that invoice, if we go into your dashboard, that will then sit in your awaiting payments tab. And essentially what will happen when that money hits your bank, you go into reconcile. And if it's a one-off item, as Kelsey touched on earlier, Xero will pick it up in green. And if it's not, Xero will, you can use the find and match or the match function. So in the find and match, you can then search all of your invoices in there that relate. And you can pick the amount that it kind of relates to. If it is a one-off amount and you're receiving that one-off money, Xero will always find it. Will always try and find it for you. It's you've got to then just check that. You've got to do that double check to make sure that invoice does relate to the amount that's come in. And that's really important if you're using it to send out private fee reports and things like that. So you get a lot of amounts coming in for £67, all this kind of stuff. You've got to make sure that your references match the invoice, because what you don't want to do is start matching invoices to the incorrect amounts, and especially if you've got invoice reminders on and things like that. So it does take more. You do need to manage it a little bit more carefully in that regard, but it will do that job for you should you need it. Okay, so I'll just jump back into dashboard and just briefly cover, click new sales invoice, fill that out into the appropriate categories and approve it. And then you get the ability to kind of match that up. Okay. But one of the really good areas in this, if you are going to use this kind of functionality within Xero, is the repeated invoice, especially for your PCSE statements or your PPA claims or anything that you might, if you're invoicing somebody for rent of a room or anything like that. A repeated invoice is always quite handy because you can basically set that up as a draft invoice, so you don't approve it automatically, which means you're not approving the wrong amount. So if I just take you into business, which is where you will find your invoices overview, and click into there. This there will then show you all the invoices that are on the system at the moment. So you can see you have different tabs. You've got draft, waiting approval, waiting payment, paid, repeating. Okay. So the waiting payment, as I spoke earlier, those invoices you're still waiting to match within your reconcile. So essentially the money that you are still owed. But what I want to show you here is a repeated invoice. So a repeated invoice is really good template essentially. So to set one up, click into your little invoice tab there, the little arrow next to it, and choose repeated invoice. And essentially it brings you up, just close that down if you don't need it. It brings you up this little page here. So you want to repeat this maybe every month or every quarter, the date that you want to repeat it on. So if I talk about this in terms of a PCSE statement, you want to repeat it every month. The invoice date usually is the middle of the month, so you could say the 15th, and then the due date, you can say, you can actually, because you're setting it up and you're retrospectively matching it, you could say the due date is actually the same date, because you're actually getting the money on the date that the invoice is kind of being appropriated, because there's no way of knowing what's going to be on that PCSE statement, is there? So you could say the following month, or you could say the same day, or the same, of the same day, or 2 days after the invoice date. That's up to you. That, however it makes you feel, whatever you're comfortable with. The end date you don't need to worry about, but it's at this point you would then say save as draft. Okay, because what that will do, it will populate that this invoice every month or every quarter into draft invoices, which is where you can then go and just amend that to actually match the figures that you've received. Okay, so the invoice would be to NHS England or Scotland. The reference would be your PCSE statement, and then you would basically go down here and you can then create a template. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to jump from here, because once you've done that, you click save, and that is then saved in your repeating invoices. So in true Blue Peter style, I've already set one up. So we go into repeating here. So again, into your business invoices and into repeating tab. And in here, I have a repeating invoice already set up. Okay. What you can do, you can set this up, so potentially for a quarter, and then you might want to then say, I want to go and edit that the following quarter because my global sum has changed. So if I open up this repeated invoice, hopefully it will show you what you're looking at within your statement. So you can see here what I've done. I've put, right, well, the global sum for this quarter is going to be 70,000 every month for the next 3 months. And I know my superannuation deductions for my partners are going to be this and this and this, and my aspiration will be this. But I'm also going to get quite a lot of additional enhanced services, of which may change the figures. So what we've done here is just put a 0 in there. Okay, and you, as I say, you can basically add as many lines as you want to this to kind of set your template up. All right, and that is your, so this is the invoice now that's saved. It's repeating, and it will repeat every month, and it will repeat into my draft invoices every month. So as I say, have a look at, if you're starting at if you're a March year end, have a look at your April statement, maybe set it up based on that for the first quarter. And then you can always go into your repeated invoices, and you can always edit that repeating invoice to just change a little bit for you if some of the recurrent figures change, essentially, is what I'm getting at there. And then all the others you can put a 0 in. You can put zeros for everything if you wanted to, and that's not a problem, because what happens with that, once you've saved that and you're happy that that's your repeating invoice, if I jump into my dashboard, what you will find, you've got now draft invoices. So we've got 2 that are populated in draft. Now a draft invoice cannot be matched within your reconcile, which is why we set it up as a draft invoice. It has to be approved to be able to do that. So if I go into my draft invoices now, I can see, right, my May invoice has been raised on the template amount that we set up. You simply go into draft, click on it, open it up, and you make your amendments in here. So you put your figures, right, I've got this for Numo, I've got this for Child IMS. You can then attach your PCSE or health board statement into here as well. So it sits next to it. So the paperwork, as Kelsey touched on, is in Xero for your accountants, and it's also there for you. So you can use Xero as a searching mechanism. We know how in England the PCSE online is, well, we won't go there, but it gives you an opportunity to be able to kind of look at that statement if it's attached to it. And what you would then do at this point, you would just say, I want to approve that. So you've made your amendments. This figure here at the total matches your PCSE statement. So the full statement that you see in your health board or your PCSE, it needs to be the total. I know we did then receive 2 amounts for that, and I will show you how you then match that one invoice against the 2 amounts. But the idea is that the total of this invoice matches what you see on that PCSE statement, on that health board statement for that particular month. Okay. And once you're happy with that and you've attached that paperwork to it, you click approve. Okay. Oh, I've archived the data, but essentially, yeah, you click approve. That will then sit back on your dashboard in awaiting payment. So it will sit in here. Okay. What you then need to do is reconcile that against the two figures that you have received. So we click into reconcile. I can see here my two payments in May. Now, what Xero cannot do now is match them in green, because if you think about it, you've got an invoice that is basically the total of these two payments. So what we have to do is match the two payments to the one invoice. So it's basically like raising, if you was in a normal business, like a little limited company or something, you raise an invoice, and if someone's paid you in 2 installments, that's essentially what is going on here. So what we would do here, I would go into the find and match functionality. I will find the total invoice, which is here, which basically that's come into draft. We've gone into draft, we've amended it, we've approved it, and it's sat there now. That's the amount that we want to do. We tick that box. However, it won't match in Xero because if the figures don't match, you've got 75, but it gives you the option to split it down. So if you click split and you say the balance of the income that we got was 76,000, and I'm paying 75 because that's what I've received, leaving me with 432. You click split on that. That enables you now to reconcile it. It's matched in green. So we click OK and confirm. And then in theory, what you should be left with is the remainder of the invoice is the additional payment that you've received. So you go into find and match, and you can see you've got the 432 there. You tick that green, that becomes green because the figures match, and you clear that out and you confirm that. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. Set your invoice template up to however you want, amend that template at the end of the month with the figures that you've got, and then match those two payments that you receive to the one. If you just receive the one payment, Xero will match that up in green for you, and you won't have to do the find and match functionality. Okay, and that works for anything, whether it's any kind of invoice you raise. If you're receiving more than one, two payments for the one invoice, then you just use your find and match functionality and choose the two amounts that relate to it. And hopefully that will give you some time back in terms of having to split down that statement every month. Most of that work is done for you in Xero. There will always be work to do because you will never know. You can't preempt what you're going to get on that statement, unfortunately. So you will always have a little bit of work to do in terms of that. The other option would be to copy and paste an invoice into the following month and then amend that as well. I know some practices do use that. I prefer this because I know that I'm in full control of that in terms of what I'm raising, what I'm doing, rather than copying and then pasting it into another date. But there's no reason you can't do both. Okay, so that's kind of a really a whistle-stop tour of raising an invoice and raising a repeating invoice. Okay. What I wanted to do, what I will do actually very quickly, because I think I've got a bit of time, I will just jump into the invoices settings template if you were going to use Xero as your invoicing tool. So in your practice name at the top, if you click on that drop down, you can go into settings. And in here, you have invoice settings. So if we click into there, Xero gives you a standard invoice template. I think that works absolutely fine. What you can then do is upload your practice logo into here. And in the options, you can then edit that invoice to include your terms and conditions, your quote, all this kind of thing. If you were going to use different additional payment services like PayPal and Stripe and all that kind of stuff, you can set that in there. Most practices don't do that. They don't really need to. You have to pay a percentage to those. Bank transfers, I think, work pretty fine. Put your bank details in here, but you can change all this out. And then once you've done that, it gives you a preview. So you can preview what that looks like in here, and also what it would look like if it was pinged to a phone as well. So you can use that functionality. So again, that's under your practice name, settings, and invoice settings. And in here, you can also turn on and off reminders. And basically what that is if you've not cleared that money out and it's still sat in awaiting payments after your 30 days, Xero will automate an email to whoever owes you that money, essentially. So you've got to make sure that you do keep on top of it if you're using that, because what you don't want to happen is emails going out to these people when they've actually paid you. So that's kind of a really quick kind of overview of the settings within invoices. What I also wanted to do was just show you the bills functionality. Now, I know a lot of GP practices will probably just pay standing orders and direct debits. You're paying the same suppliers for, you know, kind of the same stuff, even though the figures change. So you might want to use bank rules for that within your reconcile rather than bills. But you might do payment runs as well. And the principle on that is pretty similar. You've got bills you need to pay. To create a new bill, you just click new bill. And that will open up a billing, so you could put in there Viking or whatever, whoever it is you're paying, the description, the quantity, and again where that's going to, stationery, drugs and whatnot, and approve. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. It's the same as the invoicing side of things, and then that would then sit in awaiting payment, and again you would go into the reconcile tab, and if it's a one-off payment, Xero will match them up in green, and if it's not, then you need to go and search for that. But what you can do within Xero as well, if you're receiving your kind of invoice through an email, you can set up, you can send that email to Xero, and it will then create the bill for you in a draft kind of format. So in business, if we go into bills to pay, which is an overview of your bills, we can then go within here. You've got automate bill entry. You've got new bill, import bill, export bill. So in here, we can click in automate bill entry. What that gives you is a unique email address. So if you were to copy that email into your app, so let's say Williams Medical Supplies send you an invoice and they've attached the invoice to your email. If you forward that email to this email address here within Xero, it will automate a draft bill based on the invoice within the email. So you will still have to do work on that. So it would go into draft. What I would then be doing is going in, clicking into it, just to make sure it's picked up the relevant amounts. And if it has, it will have the amount in there. And then also you can attach the paperwork to there, make sure that you're posting it to the correct amounts, and then approve that as well. Let's go back into bills to pay there. Yeah, so hopefully what that will do, sometimes it doesn't pick up some of the amounts, so just as I say, you've got to do that check, and then hopefully the bill will be sat there as well within your paperwork. So it saves you having to kind of forward that, or it basically takes the attachment and it tries to read that invoice and it tries to create a bill for you from that invoice. But you do need to pop those checks in just to make sure that you're posting it to the right place and it's picked up the right figures. But if you're happy with that, you then click approve. And what you've then got is a live bill with the paperwork on it, basically just from a forwarded email, which again, you know, we're looking to try and give you back some time, aren't we? That's the idea behind using this, as well as to try and track your practice finances. And hopefully that will save a bit of time. And again, in your reconcile tab, if it's a one-off bill, then Xero will match that up in green. So if it's a wages bill, Xero's found that, you're happy with the reference and things like that, you simply click OK, and that reconciles it and clears it out. Okay. If I jump into my dashboard. So yeah, that as I say, that's, you know, we try and cram as much as we can into a fairly short space of time. But there was one area I did want to touch on, and I don't think we've touched on this before, and this is coming out of mainly in England in terms of primary care networks. And if you are managing those primary care network finances, or you are a standalone primary care network, one of the areas in Xero, and this actually would work if you are a practice with more than one site, for example, is the tracking kind of functionality. So within the tracking functionality, I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So under accounting and under advanced, we have here tracking categories. Okay. Now you can only have 2 tracking categories in Xero, but under that tracking category, you can have as much information as you like. So touching on primary care networks, what we see is, okay, you've got the PCN that's overviewing it, but under that PCN, you may have several different practices. Okay, So what we can do is set up a tracking category called practices or surgeries or site. And then with under that, you put those relevant different practices. Okay, so A, B, C, and D. Okay, that gives you your tracking category. What you then do, whether you're raising an invoice, whether you're raising a bill, or whether you're reconciling directly in Xero, you can allocate the full amount or part of the amount to that particular practice or site. So I'll jump into reconcile and I'll show you how to do it from reconcile. If you was manually just reconcile it and you weren't using invoices and bills, as Kelsey said earlier, we have the information on the left-hand side from the bank, and then on the right-hand side, what you want to do with it. Now, what you will find where you have a who, what, and why, you will also have a practice drop-down. So you could fill this in, MDU, subscriptions, but this relates to practice A, okay? If you were then adding details, as Kelsey touched on, and we open that detail tab up, what you then find here is you can break that down and say, okay, well, this is MDU, subscriptions, but only £200 of that is for practice A, and the remainder same category, because it's all subscriptions, but we're tracking them across the practices. So for things like heat and light. And this works really well, the primary care networks, because you're getting your hours monies and all that kind of stuff that you're paying out, your extended access. You can then track across which practice you're paying. What that enables you to do, and it touches on a question that was asked earlier, and we will probably touch on another time, is reports. You can then run a profit and loss report based on the practices and what money each practice has had. So if you're looking at sites, okay, the heating costs within site A compared to site B. So the tracking does come in really, really handy in terms of that. So that's something, again, we can expand on in our next session. Because I know we are now tight for time and we wanted some time for questions. So I think on that note, Laura, I will wrap that up, and we can take some questions. I'll leave my screen on share.
Okay, thank you, Lee, and thank you, Kelsey. And thank you actually to all of our audience as well. You've been really engaged with the session, which is brilliant. Reports, that is the word of the day. Yeah. Everybody is desperate for some training and some more information on reporting. So yeah. Massive thank you for your sort of comments in the Q&A. We'll definitely look to doing something on that in our next webinar, which is likely to be about September time. We'll give everybody a summer break and we'll come back in September, hopefully with some training on reports. So actually, Kelsey and Lee have been super busy in the background answering your questions as they've come through. I think there's very few live ones left. There is one just about HubDoc. So Alison was just asking, is there still a need for HubDoc?
I don't see why you'd need to. You can use Xero I mean, how much? It depends how much paperwork is running through the practice, really. But I mean, I don't really use HubDoc. I find Xero's kind of invoicing system works fine. You can do all of that through Xero. So yeah, in my opinion, if you want a HubDoc, then you need to speak to your subscriber, unless you subscribe yourself. But I don't see any reason why you would need to use that.
Okay, thank you, Lee. And one that's just popped in from Kevin, it's just about invoicing, where you've got that option to add your practice logo, and just how do you make that bigger, or can you make that bigger?
So when the logo comes into the actual invoice that you then run, it is fairly big, but I don't think there's basically it's just a template within Xero for you to upload a JPEG or something like that, a picture of your
okay.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, thank you for that. Oh, I've got another one here. Just an anonymous query has just come in. What of the total in and cash out on the dashboard? Can we touch on that, please? I'm not quite sure what that question is. I don't know if anyone maybe want to put a little bit more narrative on that one, whoever's posted that question. And then Kim's just said thank you, so that's great. Yeah, so just there was a query in the dashboard, but you can always, whoever that is, if you want to get in touch with us after the webinar, we'll try and help you with that one. Just not quite clear what that question is. I think there was one question from earlier, Kelsey, you were just going to pick up on the point about 2 bank accounts.
Yes, so for your bank accounts, you can have as many bank accounts as you like. You can have credit cards, you can have loans, loan accounts, you can have different types of banks. So if you've got an RBS and a Santander, you can have literally as many as you like. It's not a problem.
Okay, thank you, Kelsey. So at this point, we have no more live questions. That's 20 past. So I think we will wrap it up there, give everybody some time back in their day. I want to say a massive thank you to you all for joining and being so engaged with the session. Please do use the feedback that we'll issue, the feedback forms we'll issue with the recording, and let us know if there are more detailed ideas for the next training session. We do want to support the sector. It's great sort of getting in touch with all of you. And for our next one, if you do have colleagues that you think would want to join us, that is fine with us. So thank you once again and have a brilliant day, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.